Why are stories important? I believe stories are important because God's grace is in these stories. Are stories that have been told for thousands and thousands of years,
Well, I think as God's people, we are all part of God's grand story. And so for me, I hope that through the stories that children read or hear, whether they were written by me or somebody else, or they just hear them being told, that they will connect with the God who made them and who loves them and who calls them to God's grand story.
I think it's important to teach the stories of the Bible and to have that faith formation piece where you're learning about different pieces in the Bible. But I also think that within that, it's also important to say, we can ask questions. We can question the things that are in the Bible. We can question why God asked Noah to build an ark. We can ask why God had Jonah swallowed by a whale. Like, who does that?
Well, I think the scripture is our story, and it's sort of our family history. And like all family histories, there's some really bad parts of it. But there's also some really good and beautiful parts of it. And all that's mixed up together. And that's like life.
I think the biblical stories, for better or for worse, they help us to realize that we're not alone.
Both recognizing the good and the beautiful stories and the ways in which the biblical tradition speaks to that, and speaks to all of the realities that we experience as humans, but also recognizing that the biblical tradition speaks to some of our failings as humans. And some of the stories are about the ways in which humans don't treat each other well. And that sometimes human understandings of God can lead them to do not nice things. And that's as important to know and understand as anything else. So I think it's good to make sure folk have an understanding of where we come from, see the good in it, and also, begin to have some sort of critical reflection when it's appropriate.
As ancient as these stories are, we are part. There is something in us, in us as God's people. Their story is part of our story. And if you think of God as the author, which I do a lot, then that story is still being written through me and through you and through every child that we have the privilege to share those stories with.
And the biblical stories also come from so many different perspectives. Different kinds of personalities are in those stories, and different nuances and different scenarios of life, such a huge variety, different emotions. And so that when kids are learning those stories, then hopefully they can be able to realize that wherever they are, no matter what situation or how they're feeling or whatever, that somehow God is interacting with them and helping them. And to be able to help a child realize that from an early age helps them to relax.
If you think about the stories of the Bible, many of them are stories of people in crisis. The Psalms, for example, many of the Psalms, the poetry book of the Bible, people are crying out to God because of injustice and fear. The world is the same, really.
The Bible stories, not only a wide variety, but they're also, this is a generalization, but I think I can get by with this. They're also about growing people. It's not that the people ever get it right. Even at the end of the story, there's still screw-ups many times. They're still like, it's not like God says, okay, you're going to be made perfect. God just allows them to experience something in the moment and allows them to experience something in their life where they're at right now.
This is a production of Central Church, Traverse City, in conjunction with the Northern Waters District and the Michigan Conference of the United Methodist Church. Share widely. You have our permission.